We're talking about Darrin Horn in his fourth year as head coach over at Northern Kentucky. 59 wins already, and he's just starting his fourth year. Twice in 3 years, he's won 20 or more games. And we mentioned earlier, a native of Tates Creek, Kentucky. He coached at his alma mater down there, Western Kentucky, as well as South Carolina, and now at NKU. Coach, congratulations. Big win last night. I think the easiest thing in the world for a lot of people to ask is that a surprise that you beat Cincinnati? But based on everybody I talked to who watched the game, says it was no surprise at all.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Thom? I've been at this a long time, and been in a bunch of games like that on both sides, right? And sometimes when the lower level team wins, some guy goes off and gets 35, right? Or they hit 15 threes, or the other team's without the best player or whatever. Not the case at all last night. That was two college basketball teams with their best guys available. We didn't make many threes because they did a good job of taking them away. And if you watch it from start to finish and you know anything about the game, it was just two teams that were pretty evenly matched in terms of ability and how they were playing. And we just played exceptionally well, and we're fortunate to get the win.
I'm curious, Coach, when you go into a game like that, and look, I haven't seen UC play. I know the success you guys have had at NKU with John Brennaman and you taking over and how well you have done there. I don't know if your kids, you tell me, do your kids or did your kids feel like going into that game, we're not so sure how this one's going to go, or did you guys walk in there feeling like, hey, we got a good team. We're picked to finish right at the top of our conference, and we can play with anybody?
Yeah, no, I think our guys went into the game expecting to win, to be honest with you. I think it's a group that has a lot of confidence. They were recruited here to do different things. You touched on the history here in the program, the good job that John did when he was here, but there's still a lot left to be done. That's our first win over a high major, in program history. We still don't have a postseason tournament win in Northern Kentucky, so that there's a lot to be accomplished. All the guys in our program, Thom, were recruited to be a part of that. And so they kind of had that game circled on the calendar as an opportunity, to do something that's never been done here. And so we're really excited about it. And for me, it was interesting because I've been a part of some of those Cincinnati games in the early 2000s when I was at Marquette. My first year in coaching, I coached against Danny Fortson as an assistant at Western Kentucky, had some battles in the early 2000s. The Kenyon Martin team, Steve Logan. Now, this Cincinnati team is not that by any stretch, but, there's tremendous history there. You're talking about a top 20 program in college basketball history historically, and to get a win over as a school like that, for Northern Kentucky, and just I think our 8th year Division I is pretty significant.
Coach, you guys have done such an incredible amount there at NKU, as you just mentioned, just 8 years since you made the jump up to D1. I'm kind of curious, for the average guy out there who's a basketball fan, and look, in this market, if you will, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You got UC, you got Xavier, you got a lot of University of Kentucky fans. You've got this whole kind of thing going on. As the guy running the program there, your goals incrementally are what?
Well, I think it starts with what happened last night, right? You want to create a great college basketball atmosphere. I mean, there's no – I don't know that you're going to get to, 200 tickets from sellout every game, but there's no reason we shouldn't have 6,000 or 7,000 people in our building every night. Being in games like we were in last night and winning some of those. We're in a neutral site tournament next week with some really high-level mid-majors, having a chance to win something like that. We've never dominated our league. I think maybe John had one regular season title or tied or something, but never dominated our league in a regular season with an outright title. There's a lot to be done here, I think, continuing to upgrade our talent level, and that's the thing that I was most pleased with last night as a coach looking long term, is that I didn't see a ton of difference in talent on the floor between what UC had and what we had. And a lot of our guys are young, and including Sam Vincent, who's from right here in the area. And, he wasn't recruited by Cincinnati or Kentucky or Ohio State or anybody, and played like he wanted them to know.
Is that the kind of kid, Coach, at the end of the day, and I know you want to get to the point where you can walk in and say, hey, look, we've got – and you got a great arena, and we've got great fans. You got a great university, a budding university that's really blossoming through all these many decades now since the university first launched. Right now, you try to zero in on the kind of kid that is who?
Well, we want a guy that, we think, first of all, take Sam Vincent, for example. He's a local kid. We want as many local kids as we can. And we want a guy that when you turn on the game looks like he belongs in a game like last night. So, athletically, they got to have a certain baseline. But we want a guy that's got a chip on his shoulder, that's extremely competitive, and that we think has a high ceiling. The one thing that we think we do really well, Thom, I'm never going to claim to be John Wooden or be the guy that's going to win everything on the chalkboard or the clipboard at a timeout. But one thing our guys do, and we think we do it as well as anybody in college basketball, is our players get better. They really develop. We've got a long track record of that in my 13 years as a head coach, and so we want guys that we think have a tremendous upside. That as a junior, when you watch them, if you're in the NCAA tournament one day and you're winning a game, again, which is a goal of ours that hasn't happened here at this school, people are asking, man, where'd they get that guy from? And then all the schools that didn't recruit him, their fans are online saying, how do we pass on this guy? Why is he so good? Those are the kind of guys that we're looking for. And a big part of that is their competitive nature. And I think Sam's a great example of that.
I was told by some people, though, Coach, that have watched you, and look, I was one of the great all-time 5th and 6th grade basketball coaches in the history of Cincinnati. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but I was one of the all-time. But one of the things I love to watch, and I don't see it from everybody. I'm just curious, and I know you're going to be very humble about this, but guys that I talk to that have watched your teams play, and Paul was talking about this on the air a little while ago, is that when you're coming out of timeouts, whether it's, inbound the ball underneath your own basket, whether it's inbounding the ball, wherever it is the design plays on how you can get baskets. And I'm not going to say the other team's sleeping, but they're not. I always used to think that Thad Matta was so good at those kinds of plays, drawing up, especially underneath his own basket. Is that something as a coach that through your years and experience, whether it was as an assistant at Tom Crean or some of these other guys where you've been, that some coaches pay attention to that maybe more than some others do?
Yeah, I think so. And I think a big part of that, Tom's the NBA influence, right? And I probably got big on it when I was an assistant at Marquette with Tom Crean. We were there in Milwaukee with the Bucks and spent a lot of time with those guys, and it's such a big thing at that level. There's so many possessions, and it's so important to get your stars going. How can we get them the ball in the right position and against the coverage that we're seeing? And, it's funny. I was joking with our staff after the game last night, Tom. We had 3 situations last night out of timeouts that were brand new things we put in for this game that, if you execute them well and the ball goes in, what you're talking about happens and it looks great. And, wow, that guy really knows what he's doing. And if, the guys, screw it up or throw it off their foot or shoot a brick, it's nothing, right?
Right.
And last night we had 3 of those situations, and our guys did a phenomenal job of executing and getting baskets or getting fouled. And so some of it's that, but it is something that we do focus on and believe in very strongly just because, the game is hard now, man. Everybody can play. Coaches are spending a lot of time scouting and preparing. To score in the half court is difficult. So if you got a chance to get your team organized and try to take advantage of something, to get a key guy a basket, it's something that, or even just a shot attempt, it's something that we definitely focus on.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough for your time. We'd love to have you come back if you have the time. I know the season's a long one and a lot of late nights and early mornings and grinding stuff out. I've been down that road myself for a long time, and we just thank you and congratulations on a great win last night.
Well, thanks for having me on, Thom. And if you need me back on to do some SEC basketball education, all right?
You know what? No. Since you brought it up, I want you to answer me that question, okay? Because look, and Paul points out, you were down there at South Carolina. I took both my daughter and our son to visit down there. Beautiful place in Columbia, nice people, whole 9 yards. They got that beautiful new arena and the whole 9 yards, so it's a great venue. But I'm just curious, based on your experience, and I don't know if you can compare it, even though you were in Milwaukee, which is quote-unquote Big Ten country, if you will, up there. But I'm curious, do the SEC schools just pay so much more attention to football than basketball?
I think a big part of it is part of it's the tradition, right? Sure, football at most of those places is more important and bigger. It's a cultural thing a little bit in the South. I think it's such a big event on Saturdays for football or Friday nights, even in high school. I think the other part of it, Thom, is that, everything that we do comes down to recruiting, period. What players can you get at the school that you're at? And a big part of that, if you look at the schools that have been successful, Kentucky's an outlier because Kentucky's Kentucky and they've recruited nationally for 50 years. But can you get the best players in your state to stay home? So you look at the schools that have had some runs or have had a little bit more consistency, and they've been able to do that. Those guys will stay home. They want to go there. The ones that have had some high points or a little longer runs, the Alabamas, the LSUs, Arkansas, Tennessee is probably one of the better basketball programs. Those schools are able to do that and able to keep those guys. And so that's a big part of it. There's a ton of money now. Coaches are getting paid. There's resources to run your program. But, that interest from the recruits and being able to get the best players, at the end of the day, we're all only as good as our players. And so I think that's a big part of it. And that landscape is continually changing now in college basketball, right, with the NIL and the transfer portal. And so that's something that's going to be really interesting to navigate. And I think that's going to be a challenge moving forward for all the schools in our area specifically.
Well, that brings up the one point I was going to ask you, and I didn't want to take too much of your time. But you hear so much about the NIL and the transfer portal, and maybe it's just because it's this time of the year with football, right? But with basketball, what is the? It was said that the rich are only going to get richer. And again, I'm just hearkening back to football, but I'm sure you could say the same thing about basketball, whether you're talking about North Carolina or Kentucky or Duke or UCLA, whoever you want to talk about. For a school that's building what you're building at NKU, is NIL, I'm going to separate these two, is NIL a plus or a minus for you guys?
Well, I think it's a plus for us, right? Because, if a kid's going to, with the transfer portal and them not having to sit out, if they're going to leave because they just want to be at a higher level, then, they're going to leave, right? We had a terrific player who's a two-time champion here, Jalen Tate, three-time champion actually, who at the end of with no NIL, at the end of his senior year, he had a fifth year. He just wanted to try to go play at the highest level. He just wanted to be at one of those schools and kind of see what he could do. Went to Arkansas and did really well. And so I think that's always been the case if you're at a mid-major school. Where I think it's helpful is, our guys are involved in it. There's some stuff happening here for I think there to be more opportunities for our guys. And I think what you get, Thom, is like, of course there's going to be, and I don't know what these numbers are. And again, coaches aren't involved in it at all, but, some school, and it's not supposed to be pay for play, but it seems like maybe that's how it's happening at the higher level.
Yep.
That, if it's made obvious to a kid that, there's a certain number that, it really looks like he might have an opportunity to earn, then, we're probably not going to meet that number. But if we can do something for our guys and they're having a great experience here and they're getting better, then I think it's a positive for us. And in general, I'm in favor of players, having the freedom to pick the right school and to earn on their name, image, and likeness. I just hope we haven't gotten too far ahead of ourselves and these guys are jumping ship and chasing some pennies that in the long term it's not best for them and transferring out. A stat that people aren't talking enough about is last year over half the kids, and it was over 1,000 that went into the portal, ended up without a Division I scholarship this fall. That's not good, because at the end of the day, though, we're becoming semi-pro, which is fine. We're still in the business of helping young people and trying to educate some kids. And so you hate to see that, especially with, the demographic that's affected by it the most.
So if I heard you right, because I've never heard anybody say this before, are you saying that there were 1,000 kids last year that were on some kind of scholarship wherever it was they were. They decide to leave to go into the transfer portal, and half of those players don't get any money to go somewhere else. Is that right, or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, no, and my numbers might be a little off.
Okay, but
it's
close.
Pushing 50 in terms of totals, but it's pushing 50% of kids that just don't get scholarships. So, you're talking about guys that leave, for the most part, probably low to mid majors, I would say. Again, I don't have all the statistical information on it, but there's a lot of guys that don't get picked up. Grass isn't always greener, and going through this process of maturing as a young person and, learning to deal with some adversity and those kind of things is still part of what we do. That is the one thing that still separates us a little bit from being fully professional, right? There's an academic component, and we still are in the business of trying to do that. And again, I'm in favor of all the other. I think it's great. But that's not a good thing. And so hopefully that'll kind of come back down. Right. And the other thing that's going to be really interesting, and we won't deal with this at our level as much in terms of total numbers, but some of the numbers you hear getting thrown around, probably if you're Ohio State for sure, and probably if you're Xavier or Cincinnati, Thom, they're significant. They're significant. And, what about performance? What about then if that kid wants to leave? I'm just not sure how the people that are involved in these, collectives and NIL situations are going to feel about if they've helped get a kid to a school or, helped with his NIL and all of a sudden, he's not there anymore. He doesn't play very well. It's a different dynamic that's going on. So I don't know how long it takes that to play out. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 or 7? I don't know, but I think there's going to be some settling effect, if that makes sense. With all of this. But I think for us, it's a good thing because we're a building, growing program that, if you can go to Kentucky and they're telling you, hey, we feel like you can get what Oscar Sheway's getting. Yeah, I might kick him out the door, Thom. I might kick him out the door and say, take that opportunity, man. Appreciate what you've done for us. Because the other thing about it is, keep this in mind, nobody wants you at that level if you haven't been successful here.
Yeah.
And so, if we're in the business of believing that we help young people improve and get better and try to make them successful, we're not going to take an opportunity from them. So all in all, I think it could be a positive for us and something we're excited about. And we were fortunate that we kept our best guys this year, and we'll hope that it happens again. And if we don't, you know what, we'll have to go get another one.
Coach, thank you for your time. This has been great. NKU's in good hands with you at the helm over there. All the best to you.
Well, anytime, Thom. Appreciate being on, and love to come back some other time, talk college basketball in general if you want. They paid me to do that for a few years when I was out.
I know they did. I can tell. I mean, you belong right up there on the set. Man. I mean, hell, you ought to come in here. I mean, there are people that want to run me out of here. The guys that are working with me accused me of being an ex-professional the other day. So, I mean, it is what it is, right?
I've been accused of the same, brother.
Yeah, I got it. Coach, good luck to you. Thank you for your time.